So imagine somebody had like $1 million and they walked up to you and said, here, what would you do with this? You know, you've got a little bit of a track record and a ton of creative stuff. You run Saint Sprites, and somebody says, here's $1 million. Would you do something totally different? Would you double down on $1 million worth of Saint Sprites stuff? Or could you do that? An idea that might help the world, help the church, do some good. What's something that's been on your heart for a long time?
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good question. Well, I guess my first thought, and maybe this isn't necessarily like a more creative thing, but like, I mean, we just like 10 seconds ago talked about how to have more engaging catechesis. And I feel like that's such an important thing in the church is where a lot of people are not well catechized. At least that wasn't my upbringing in my home parish. Just like better catechesis. But yeah, how to like do it in a creative way. Oh gosh. I feel like, I mean, part of the reason why I started Saint Sprites was because I have a love for video games, and I thought in my mind, if Blessed Carlo were still alive, he would be making all these amazing games, and probably ones that are about the saints or just full of Catholic virtue and are rooted in truth. And I know video games cost a lot of money to make, and so it'd be so cool if there was some sort of video game or RPG that could teach people more about catechesis or like more on the teachings of the church. I'm not exactly sure what that would look like, but it would be so cool to have that funded and have creatives from all different sorts of mediums, sound designers, animators, game developers, storytellers, religious priests, like all coming together to create. Even maybe it could be like a series of games on learning more about different aspects of the church or different virtues or things like that. And yeah, so I mean, I don't know how much video games cost to make, but I would imagine it'd be a lot of money. And so I guess hopefully, I guess $1 million would probably do it. But
Probably start, or maybe, yeah, depending on what you do, get a bunch done. My wife and I were just talking this morning, I think, or last night, about how fast games are developing and how quickly the tech is also developing to allow like average people to actually be able to get in and start putzing around and creating some stuff. And it's fast getting to a point where we can actually start creating pretty cool looking stuff. And that sort of creator economy is finally coming to the gaming world, which I don't know what that means in the next 4 years. I think it's an incredibly fun thing. So keeping it messy for a second, I just want to keep going with that line of thought because I think it's really cool.
For sure.
Like you said, creating games and sharing these, there's so much possible truth that could be shared. Like what kind, I imagine that there's a feeling or a kind of game that you're perhaps picturing. Like what would you do? Like if perhaps you decide, hey, I'm starting a studio tomorrow, I'm putting out a casting call, whatever, and this might be the story that, I don't know, I might change my mind in 6 months, but if you were to start on something, do you have an idea that you think this could be cool? This would be cool enough to spend a lot of time on?
Yeah. Honestly, like the first thing that comes to mind is I like open world games and getting to just explore and putz around and stuff. Like I just recently finished the Hogwarts Legacy game, which is like this open world game. You get to explore Hogwarts Castle and just like be a kid.
Stuck on the Merlin challenges. I'm really on.
I just stopped doing those. I was like, I'm not. It takes too much time. There's so much packed into that game, and I just like a game that would invoke that sense of wonder and awe and give you a look into a world that maybe was just in your head for a long time. And so I think of, stories in the Bible. Like I would love to play an open world RPG through the Gospels. Maybe you play as one of the disciples and you get to witness Jesus performing his miracles, or you know, just even mundane things like just walking through the towns or having a meal with
like
Jesus.
A cozy game through the Gospels. I mean,
Oh
it didn't exactly end in a cozy place, but it's like, okay, it's 3 years, you know.
Yeah, that would
really
be fun. A cozy gospel game. Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah, you'd have to figure out how to sort of navigate through the ending there.
Or you do it afterwards during the time of Acts, right? Because that's the time when the Christian communities were exploding. And for the first time, people are like, wait, women matter, kids matter, sick people matter, and we can actually create communes and little communities where we work together. And
world building game, but it's like evangelization
inside the existing Roman Empire, but you can't access any of the assets that are available. So you're like ferrying information through these massive cities and across countrysides between these communities, and you're fucking things. It's a bit like not Age of Empires, but I don't like that
something
new
like
play
that.
Tales of the Shire, maybe, or Palea, where it's kind of like, how do we grow food and support each other? And
limited resources, strategy, like running from the Romans, like persecution happening. Yeah, that would be
so maybe there's like different types of what do you call it? Well, different types of gameplay. It's like toggle on persecution, toggle on sort of Assassin's Creed, delivering Paul's messages in times of danger, you know, and slipping through dangerous lines or something like that. Kind of, so what would be fun, what I'm hearing, what would be fun about that would be a return. So what you're doing is you're not hitting people over the head with like, oh, here's theology and here's dogma and here's things you should learn. It's more like, here's how we see the world and how we take care of each other. So it's like an introduction to what the church calls Catholic social teaching. Here's how we live as a society. Here's how we take care of each other. And here's how the world just doesn't get it and creates a whole lot of pain. But these are baselines for healthy human living. And to game through that, I think, is very cool.
No, exactly. There's like, not being so, like you said, like hitting people over the head with like catechesis or like evangelization and stuff like that. Just like allowing people to see truth in like a really authentic lens. And there's such a power in games of like, I mean, before games were just like, you know, for fun, purely for entertainment, but now we're getting into these moral dilemmas, and especially with games where you have to choose your path, or, you know, build relationships with the other characters. There's like a moral aspect, and it's interesting the way people play, because it's like, do I want to be true to my values, or do I want to see what would happen if I were to exit outside of what I believe in?
That is so interesting. I just saw that on a game trailer the other day, where they're like, depending on the choices you make, you could choose to win the game by playing evil and making evil choices, but then you start to become evil and other things come in to engage with you. Or you could choose to play good or something like that. You might stay good, and then you could win the game by making good choices. And I thought, that means you could play the game two totally different ways and win it, but have two completely different experiences. Couldn't you imagine like the Miracle expansion pack or the Missions expansion pack, you know, taking this same thing? It's like you're slowly building up the kingdom of God. And that would be the thing for a game like this, is how do you not, how do you say this? This is what a lot of people complain about, colonializing or religious colonization or something. So to have a game that plays through, here's how we learn to navigate what the early church was trying to navigate for the first time, how to be kingdom building without being triumphalist. And I think that's actually a really important message for us today to try to figure out. We don't really know how to do that.
Yeah. No, that's definitely something important to consider. And yeah, I mean, like having something as immersive as a game where you meticulously take into account all these different aspects of the history and what was happening and the culture and how they had to navigate, how to spread the gospel, like just like contextualizing it would be such a huge thing for people to have greater understanding of the church and its core values of spreading the message of Jesus. Like, obviously we're not for exploiting people or forcing things down people's throat, but to just see that the gospel is a message of love and have that be the core of a game would be so powerful, because the stories in games have such a great impact on our emotions, because we are like interacting with it, as opposed to like, I mean, movies and reading, like, they still impact us, but video games in a different way, because you are almost there and you are acting in the place of that person. I recently, I guess I can't spoil it, but with Hogwarts Legacy, there's so many like moral dilemmas going on in the storyline. And I thought it was going to be just like some, cutesy, like, oh, get to skip around Hogwarts sort of thing. But there's some really dark themes that impacted me, that had me contemplating more about like grief and what does it mean to suffer or accept like grief in one's life. And I guess if I had played that, maybe when I was like 16, I would have just thought like, whatever, just let me go down the path that's the most interesting and stuff like that. But there were some points where I was presented with a choice and I was like, oh, like, whoa, this is kind of crazy. Like, this is impacting me in a deeper level than just this is a fun game. And so anyway, I just kind of went on a tangent there, but to be able to teach people at the core of like what truth is, and get people to feel it be so huge.
Yeah, the point you're getting at that I'm hearing is, I mean, there are some games you play that are just for fun and that's all they stay at.
Yeah.
It's just, it's here for the dopamine, it's here for the rah-rah, whatever. But then there's other games that really do have depth and thought into them. There's like an actual story that's actually trying to take you somewhere, as opposed to just, here's more, and then here's more. It's like, so, darn, I had a thought there and I lost it. But that sense of a game that actually has a story, has something to share. So what's, well, you mentioned Hogwarts Legacy. What are some of your other favorite games that you're loving to play these days? Or
yeah, sure. Hogwarts Legacy has been a lot of fun. I definitely have to take breaks from it because of like the story can be kind of intense sometimes. Let's see, what else? I love, on the more casual side, I love playing Overcooked. Have you played it?
I haven't, no.
So it's basically this like, it's similar to Diner Dash. It's like this speed game where you have to prepare these dishes and you gotta like put the right ingredients together and serve it on time. I love playing that with my roommates or my friends. It's a great like family friend game, and it's so chaotic. It's like, if you don't like being yelled at during games, maybe don't play it, but it's definitely like a fun, chaotic game that I love to play.
About that is like, we'll go shopping with like my wife and stuff, and she'll look at being a cashier in a supermarket. It's like, you couldn't pay me to take this job, And but then she'll come home and she'll play a game called Supermarket, where she's running a supermarket and stocking the shelves and like setting up checkout lines and trying to and managing the different brands that get on the shelf. And I'm like, first of all, for me, that game is not as, I don't know, she loves it. She does really, really well at it too. I'm watching that and I'm just thinking, like what you just said there, I could so see in the future where we get rid of this idea of like, I need to see a 10-year degree before you can get, before you can be a line cook. And instead, what level are you in, wine chef, 2000 something. And for somebody to walk in, here's my application. I became a boss in running supermarkets or, because that's the fun thing about games, especially games that are done really well. And some of them seem to keep getting really better or a lot better. This actually comes back to the point I was trying to say. You can actually teach people not just real life skills, but how to actually think and navigate through actual situations.
Right.
Be real life skills that can be taught. And that's the thing with a good game, I think, is that you'll actually live through something. You won't just play something. You'll actually be changed because you're having to feel through and live through an experience. Like with a book, it can also be very transformational. So can a movie. But then the game is that next step because it's that one extra layer of immersion into an experience. I think that can be such a powerful thing, such a powerful space in which to do something really well. I'm just really fascinated by the next 4 to 10 years. What happens when we actually start using more games to teach people stuff? Like, how could you gamify accounting?
Yeah.
How can you gamify understanding how a McDonald's works so that, I would hire somebody who knows how to manage political economies. Like, I remember a couple of years back, I saw it was a massive project. I can't remember what it was called. It was insane. It was some spacefaring game, galactical colonization game. And everybody got together. They knew the game was going to be shut down or something. And so they coordinated across thousands of people an interplanetary trek to get everybody together and then trek to the next system and then deposit and all of their stuff there and reset up all of the trade routes. And this is like 10 years ago.
Wow.
This is back when people would spend like hundreds of hours every month, every week or something to play this kind of thing. I cannot begin to imagine the logistics of that. But whoever the team was, that was just totally people-led. This wasn't even the team at the top. This is like just rank and file people, gamers just playing the game did this. Those life skills, whoever learned those logistics, man, there's a talent pool right there.
Yeah. No, there's so much power in that. And I mean, there's games that are coming out that are really realistic to skills that people are trying to learn. Like, I read about, like, or maybe somebody was talking to me about this, but there's this like racing simulator where like they had people practice in this racing simulator, and it's just like, the controller is this wheel and you got all the levers or whatever is needed, and they had them train on this thing, and then they had them compete in like real life, and the people who were training on the simulator actually did like really well. I think like even won this competition. I don't know how big the competition was, but it's like they only had them play on this simulation, yet they were able to translate those skills into real life. I know a lot of people, like my friends who are plane nerds or aviation nerds, like they love plane simulators, and like for fun they'll just like go into their room and like, I'm gonna go on a flight, and then they like boot up their computer and like go on a flight in the virtual world. But yeah, even things like that are so detailed because they have like literally everything that would be in an actual plane, and so they can learn so much from these virtual worlds. And especially with VR, or VR and AR that are emerging more, I'm sure there will be a lot more games or simulators that will help people to learn these skills and apply them in real life. So
tell us more about your background, Theresa. What's your story? And I mean, when did you start gaming?
Yeah. Let's see. So I'm like I had an existential crisis because at one point I was trying to figure out what generation I'm a part of. I've officially come down to that, like I'm a late Gen Z, or I'm an older Gen Z. So for a while I was like, oh, I'm a millennial, but I'm not. I'm 26. But yeah, so my first experience with gaming actually was, have you heard of this thing called the Leapster?
No, I haven't.
So it's basically like this, it's a Game Boy, but it's like educational. Okay. And so my parents didn't want to get me like an actual Game Boy because they didn't think it would be good for me, and so they got me a Leapster. But it was really fun. It was like all these like math games or drawing games, and you like learn a lot about just subjects that you'd learn in school, but through games. Nice. And I loved that thing. I would bring it around everywhere I went. Eventually my parents got me a Game Boy Advance. It was one of those like purple ones that are like this big. My first game was Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets for Game Boy Color.
Wow.
And I can't remember how old I was, but I literally had no idea how this game worked, but I thought it was like so fun. I was like, I get to play Harry Potter. Like, this is my favorite thing ever. And so, yeah, I grew up a lot with like Game Boy Advance games and then going into the DS era, which was huge for Nintendo. That was kind of like a core part of my childhood was the DS and the fact that you could easily link up with your friends or like chat on PictoChat or just join a game room and play Super Mario mini games with people or play Mario Kart on the DS. That was such a huge part of my childhood was going to a friend's house and then playing on our DS or playing Pokemon too. That was a big thing. And so gaming for me was like very communal. And yeah, just an outlet for me to be with my friends, and it was cool like getting to talk to people to my friends as kids of like, oh, which Pokemon should I get, or like what's the best way to beat this gym leader, or sharing all these strategies. It built this sense of community and like this sense of like working towards something that I really loved. I played a lot of Club Penguin and RuneScape, so like those browser RPGs. I had a lot of fun with those. So yeah, like obviously didn't grow up in the time where video games just started, but it was like, I feel like it was definitely a transformational time in which games started to become more communal, and more online. And so, yeah, that's a bit of my background with how I got started in gaming. I wouldn't say that I'm a very hardcore gamer. I'm definitely more of like a casual gamer. Like I like to be cozy and just play with my friends. So yeah.
Yeah. No, it's cool. We've got we homeschool our little girl, and she has a couple of apps that she uses, but one of the major ones is it's like teaching math and English, but it's like through Pokemon or something like Animal Farm, not Animal Farm Valley.
Stardew Valley?
No. What's the other one?
Animal Crossing?
Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
So it's like a combo of those two. She goes on to battle Pokemon. She's got to answer math questions, and so
wow.
Man, I cannot imagine what sort of student I would be if I'd had that as a kid. So here goes this experiment with this generation, but it's like,
yeah.
I mean, she's insanely smart with all of that stuff. So it's yeah.
No,
I
that's
think
awesome.
we're going to see a lot more of this. So what I want to ask you about Saint Sprites and how you got into that, but before that, I think you have a degree, or you studied somewhere. What did you study, and where did you go?
Yeah, so my college education was interesting. I studied computer music at the University of Washington in Seattle. So I actually ended up creating my own major because there wasn't really anything at the UW that I wanted to study, or at least my educational career was interesting, but I originally was trying to go in for electrical engineering because I wanted to study more of like hardware and music technology and how people make plugins and synthesizers and things like that. So that was like my first route, but I didn't get accepted. Engineering at the UW is pretty hard. But I ended up, just creating my own major, which was actually a lot better for me because I could really like craft my education to be my own and really study what I felt would be best for me. And so I took a lot of classes on just like essentially what was sound design. And so like taking recordings of various objects and manipulating them and using code to create these interesting sounds or synthesizers, and really experimental pieces, or using Arduino, which is like this little kind of like hardware that you can kind of do some really basic code and learn how to make robots and things that move and stuff like that. And so using those to like build like physical synthesizers and manipulate sounds in interesting ways. So yeah, I feel like, I mean, it was way better for me to do that instead of electrical engineering, where I wouldn't have really had the chance to focus more on music and art. And so the major that I had put together was a really good intersection and balance between music and technology, and finding different ways that technology could create things that you've never heard of before. I'll kind of nerd out for a second here, but my senior composition was this 3D piece, and I was really interested in 3D audio at the time. But basically, this composition was to be played in a 3D sphere of speakers, so you could hear up, you can hear down, and behind you and stuff. And so you could actually take different sounds and in the code, like place them in a specific spot in space. And so something that I was really proud of was like I had this weird like metallic sound that sounded like water. It was like the scraping of metal, but it was like it's like whooshing. Okay. And at some point it like shoots up, and then this like rain sound comes down upon you, and it sounds like you're being rained upon. And so yeah, I don't know what that was like a highlight of my like educational time at UW, was just getting to create these really immersive compositional pieces, and that was how I got really into sound design. And yeah, like eventually that led into a couple of other things throughout my career, but yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell.
So what else do you get up to? And again, we'll come back to Saint Sprites in just a minute. What else do you get up to creatively, apart from all of the stickers and the brand that you're building? What are some other things that you do that's fulfilling and meaningful for you?
Yeah, a lot of things. And we've talked about this before. Like, I'm definitely somebody who has a lot of interests and wants to do everything all the time. But my first creative love has always been music. Ever since I was a kid, I loved to sing, loved to play guitar. Eventually learned how to record and produce my own music. So that's like a really big part of my life, and a big way that the Lord has graced me throughout my life is through this way of expressing myself through music. So that's a really important part of my life. I also love photography. Yeah, I love getting to document my own life. I'm always like bringing a camera around. Here it is. I recently just like found this old camcorder in my parents' house. Okay. I mean, it's not that old, but I've been enjoying like just taking home videos of my roommates and friends, and just having candid documentation of my life. Yeah. And then I love to do like music photography. Started getting into like portraiture and engagement shoots. Yeah, I love doing that. Sound design, as I mentioned. I've done some stuff for radio theater. I would love eventually to do sound design for games. I'm always like looking up videos on how people made the sounds to this game, or like Breath of the Wild, the sound design in that is like so incredible. All these different tiny little details that really add up to make the game what it is. Like it's so cool. So yeah, I think those are a couple of things that I enjoy doing. And then Saint Sprites.
So what was the inspiration for Saint Sprites? Why did you start it?
Yeah, Saint Sprites was, it was definitely like a slow development for Saint Sprites. So in 2020, that was when Carlo Acutis was beatified. And before that, I had never heard of him before. But I just remember I had my first job out of college. I was working as a receptionist for a parish. And this was still during COVID time and stuff like that. So I didn't really have much to do at my job, but I was browsing on my computer, found out about Blessed Carlo, learned more about his life and how he's a millennial saint who loved video games and computer programming, and made this amazing website about Eucharistic miracles, and also was just like somebody who deeply loved the Lord and loved his family and his peers. And I was just like so amazed that somebody as seemingly regular as him is now about to be canonized soon. And to think of somebody who also had similar interests as me, like playing video games or, you know, interest in technology and stuff. I was just really inspired by the simplicity of his heart. And yeah, so then I was like, if he were alive today, he'd be making these awesome games. Like, he'd be making games about Joan of Arc, or like RPGs of Joan of Arc, and just all these amazing things. And I was like, it would be so cool if there were like a game about the saints. And so like I had my iPad at the time and started drawing these like pixel art saints that were terrible. They looked so bad. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was just doing it for fun. And so I drew, the first 4 saints I drew were Blessed Carlo, Mary, Saint Faustina, and Maximilian Kolbe. And so I made this really bad animation. I was also really into making chip tunes, and so I took like this hymn from like, I don't know, my church's hymn book, and just like turned it into a chip tune, slapped it on top of the animation, and then posted it. And people were like, this is so cool, like Blessed Carlo in pixel form and stuff like that. And yeah, I kind of like didn't really think much more about it. I kind of tabled the idea and just thought it was like a fun little animation that I made. But then I think over the course of the next 3 years, I realized more people were asking me about it. Like, are you going to make more of those pixel saints? Like, it'd be so cool. Like, if you made a poster or stickers of those, like, I would totally buy them. And I kind of just like, I was like, yeah, maybe eventually, I don't know. I didn't really think much of it. But then my friend was like, can I buy 50 stickers for my kindergartners? And I was like, you want 50 stickers? And at the time I was like, 50, that's so many. I mean, to me it's still kind of a lot, but I was like, okay, so maybe there is a market here. Maybe people would want these stickers. So I actually had a middleman kind of make these stickers for me. I wasn't making them myself at the time, and I just got like a sample of a couple and then posted on my Instagram like, hey, does anyone want these? And then they sold out like that. I was like, okay, maybe people actually do want these. Yeah, then fast forward to 2023, I just like took a risk. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go all in. I'm going to buy a printer. I'm going to buy a sticker cutting machine. We're going to learn how to do this. And we're going to make a bunch of stickers of a bunch of saints and see how it goes. And it was received really well. And now we're here almost a year in.
And what is here? Like, how well are you doing? What are you thinking of? Where are you going with it all? Paint us a picture now where you are.
Let's see. I'm trying to think how many saints I have. I have a lot. And honestly, there's the amount of new ideas is endless because there's so many saints in the world, which is wonderful. Yeah. Let me see. I think I have probably like 50 saints right now, which really isn't that many considering how many saints there are in the world. But I think I got a lot of the most popular ones. But yeah, I mean, right now, what's here, still very much a small business, but bringing in consistent orders each week, I'd say a couple $100 worth a month, which is like more than what I could have ever imagined. But I feel like the biggest thing, aside from sales or numbers, is just like community and like the relationships and that and the conversations that I've been able to have. I mean, even like getting connected with you and getting to be a part of the Legend Haven convention, or I did a collaboration with Bobby Angel, or getting connected with Jared Dees, who sent me his book on the gospel in games. And then even getting to interact with the customers, like just seeing people's reviews on Etsy are like so heartwarming to me. Every time like a godparent or a parent buys stickers for their kids, I'm just like, oh, my heart is like so like overjoyed. And they say like, oh, my son loved it, or my godson loved it, or my goddaughter loved it. I'm just like, wow, it's really amazing to get to bring people joy through these really small things. There was one Etsy reviewer who said he has a friend who's a recent convert who has a really deep devotion to Blessed Carlo. And so he bought a sticker and drove it and gave it to his friend, and his friend just started crying.
Wow.
And I was like, what? Like, this pixel art sticker, like, reminded somebody of their belovedness and how God is watching over them. And so that's like the biggest blessing that has come out of this shop, is just the community and getting to interact with people and seeing how it's impacted people's like days has been like the biggest blessing throughout all of this.
That's awesome. If you were to give one piece of advice to other creators out there who right now are where you were a couple of years back, thinking about starting this whole thing, or starting anything that they're passionate about or interested in or curious about, what would you say to them?
I would say just do it. I know that's what everybody says, but you just never know where things can go. If you have an idea that you've been mulling over, like, just start small. Like, I mean, what I did, I got like a small package of like 25 stickers and then posted on my personal Instagram just to see if there was a market for it. Yeah, like, and there's a piece of advice that somebody gave me, and this is kind of more for discernment purposes, but I think it can apply here, of like, God can more easily like guide somebody who is slowly moving, rather than try to force somebody who is not moving at all. And so just like moving slowly and surrendering it to God and trusting that he'll guide you to where you need to go is like such a big thing. But I think also another thing, aside from just do it, is also it's okay to go slow. Like, I've tried to make a couple of other like business type things in my life, and all of them were made out of anxiety and fear of like, I have to like make this right now because I need more income and stuff like that. But they all always failed. And so with Saint Sprites, it was already a very slow process, and that's how I try to like operate still, is to have this like slower intentionality, which has been a lot more successful than just like trying to immediately go from point A to point Z. So just do it, but it's okay to like take it one step at a time.